What's going on, everyone? It's your host, the Sports Moose, with the Sports Heap, coming at you with a new episode of the Thunderdome Puckcast. Happy championship weekend if you're an NFL fan or a football fan, but we're going to talk hockey with you. So like we always do, let's hit that intro. Alright, we are back with the Thunderdome Puckcast. Again, hope you're having a great evening. It's your host, Moose, or the Sports Moose, with the Sports Heap. If you're listening to episode 9, a couple changes since our last episode. It's been about 10 days or so since we dropped episode 8, and we've been back in the game with the Lightning. Of course, been watching every game and tweeting out on our Twitter. My handle's down below, Moose, and that's at Moose_TSH. Sure, a few of you guys are asking, well, what is this Sports Heap we're talking about? And I don't think we had this in place. We kind of launched it last week when we did our last episode of $10 Sports, our sports gambling show. And, of course, our episode of the Viper's Nest, the first episode of our XFL focus show for the Tampa Bay Vipers. So this is big news for our hockey fans. We kind of reorganized a little bit, and we moved away from the Balls, Brews, and Bros name. We love it. It's still going to be one of our shows, or our live shows that we do with Emrod. But we wanted something a little bit more catchy, and we thought the Sports Heap, especially we'll have a couple friends coming on board and contributing podcasts in the future as well. So kind of heap a group of stuff. We'll be covering different items like sports and movies and whatnot. So if you're watching on our YouTube channel, pre-recorded this time, not a live show, you'll see our network of shows. Of course, the Viper's Nest, this show, the Thunderdome Puckcast, a Lightning-focused podcast for Lightning fans. The Bucking Hangover, kind of our flagship show with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now in its off-season until the draft or something big happens, like the inevitable re-signing of Jameis Winston. Balls, Brews, and Bros, which is our live shows that we do with Mike or Emrod, that we'll talk sports and, of course, a little bit of non-sports as well. And $10 Sports, the amateur sports betting advice show. Got another episode of that dropping either tonight or tomorrow with championship weekend betting advice. And we're going to start getting into hockey and a little bit of UFC action as well, with Conor McGregor and Cowboy Cerrone fighting tonight. You see our logos below, the Sports Heap in the middle, Sports Moose to your right, and Emrod. We found the fedora. We were able to produce a fedora for him. Emrod at the Sports Heap on your left. Really excited to have this new format. I think it's a little bit more approachable, a little bit easier for you guys to find us on YouTube, on Twitter, and of course anywhere that you can find podcasts. The first 4 episodes of the Thunderdome Puckcast is up. We should have the last 4 of the Thunderdome Puckcast, as well as this episode 9, right at your fingertips at Spotify, iTunes, or I guess Apple Podcasts now, right, and Google Podcasts coming down the road, and I think iHeartRadio. So you'll see over on our right, as we always do if you're watching live, our topics for the week. Again, we're going to have a double drop of Thunderdome Puckcast. We'll get back at you probably Sunday evening as the Lightning head into their bye week. But for tonight, we're going to cover last week's action. But of course, first and foremost, it's time to check in on the Metropolitan Division and the NHL leading Washington Capitals. We'll go through some of their statistics. John Carlson having a great season. Going to recap last week for the Lightning. An amazing week, getting to the end of their 10-game winning streak, unfortunately. Go over the injury report, which thankfully has actually turned into no injuries into this week, so we might have to scratch that off for episode 10, but we had a little bit to talk about in terms of injuries for last week. Introducing our segment, Hot or Not. So we'll go through who's hot and who's not, or what group of people are on the hot seat or not on the hot seat in the NHL and elsewhere. And then, of course, our usual what lies ahead, what kind of action we expect this week. By the time I'm recording this, the Lightning already dropped a game against the Wild. Why do we always have a problem playing in Minnesota? I just don't understand. And then one last game to get through tonight against the Winnipeg Jets, and we'll recap all that action. Probably Sunday afternoon, we'll drop episode 10 of the Puckcast. Hope you enjoyed the new intro. Made it a little bit longer for our podcast listening friends. Give a little bit of head bopping music, right? And then a nice little video to go with that sparking lightning and whatnot. Some special effects we were able to edit in there. So hope you enjoy that. But as we do it, it's time to check on our conference rivals over in the Metropolitan Division. I really should change that logo. I think that was the Nashville logo for the All-Star. Hopefully we'll get the new All-Star logos with the St. Louis Blues on there. For right now, the Met Division over here. Let's take a look at them on the second screen. I think we're ready to go with the standings, at least. And as we usually do, we'll look at the statistics for our partners over in the Metropolitan Division. And no surprise, of course, Washington leading the way, leading the NHL right now, 69 points. Though kind of surprising, Boston's a close second at 68. They have, actually Boston's played one more game, so really a difference there of potentially 3 points. Washington's been playing average hockey as of late. They dropped one, I think, against the New Jersey Devils, which we'll talk about. I think the Devils won back-to-back games against the Caps and the Lightning, two of the best teams in the league. So maybe they're on the up and up after firing their coach, which seems to be the new thing to do to motivate your team. We'll talk about that in Hot or Not. But no surprise, Capitals up top. I think I was really surprised, though, and we'll look at that as we get into the statistics. Braden Holtby is not having like an amazing year. Definitely not a Vezina type year. He's really not leading in, I mean, maybe other than wins, and we'll look at that more closely. Really not leading in major goaltending statistics. So, again, I'd have to say that the Capitals are just playing great team hockey. They're not having to depend on Braden Holtby. It's always great to have a goalie the caliber of Braden Holtby, but he certainly isn't stealing games for him as he has been in the past seasons. Pittsburgh and the Islanders. Islanders might make an appearance on the Hot or Not list, so stay tuned. They've been playing some pretty average hockey. Carolina's also come down a bit as well. It's a tight race, though. 56 points going down to 6th place. It's going to be anyone's game. Columbus has been playing pretty well as of late towards getting the troops into shape. I think it's Korpisalo in net with Bobrovsky moving on to the Panthers. And the Rangers technically not out of it, though 6-8 points can sometimes get a little tricky to sneak into the wild card spots. I think we're going to probably have 2 wild card teams coming out of the Metropolitan this year. Florida with 55 and Buffalo 51 over here in the Atlantic. So, I mean, as of right now, Florida wouldn't even make the playoffs, which is a little disappointing. We still want the first Lightning Panthers playoff series. I'm telling you, I'm hoping this is the year that it happens. But I'd fully expect both wildcard teams to come out of the Metropolitan, and it's going to be a big battle. It's good to see Philly back into the swing of things. And, of course, we'll get to that game against the Lightning in a few short minutes. Pittsburgh's been playing well as well. We'll look at some statistics for Tristan Jarry, who's been carrying the load. It seems like he's been drawing into net more often than not versus Murray, who may be injured. I'm not sure if he's maybe fallen out of favor or they're truly splitting time. Hoping those bunch of jerks, Carolina, keep it in there. It's always fun when they make the playoffs to see the storm surges that they've been coming up with. And If you follow me on Twitter again, at Moose_TSH, love those Hartford Whalers jerseys. I have one of my own, and I think they pulled off the Whalers jerseys against the Kings last week. So always makes me happy to hear the Brass Bonanza and those Hartford Whalers jerseys. So let's take a look at the stats for the Metropolitan Division. I have a feeling that Connor McDavid and both Leon Draisaitl are going to make an appearance on Hot or Not. Samsonov's played well in the backup role in goal, but as you see, we're looking at some of the top goaltenders in goals against average. Holtby's not there. Holtby's not. Actually, let's start with goaltending, because I was really surprised about that. I was going to expect Holtby to be in the top, probably in the top half of the league, at the top 5 or top 6 goalies in the league in terms of goals against average and save percentage. Samsonov drawing into 18 games. Let's see. Let's find Braden Holtby. Is he all the way down here? No way. There's no way he's... Yeah, there he is. Again, playing the lion's share, 32 games, but he really hasn't played well this year. I'd be curious to see statistics behind expected goals for the Washington Capitals to see if they've just been over-delivering and really outscoring the rest of the league. But these are very, very not typical numbers for Braden Holtby. .899 on the save percentage, .302 goals against average. So they've been very fortunate to be getting great games from, looks like their backups, Ilya Samsonov this year, 14-2. Kind of Louie Domingue-like numbers like the Lightning had last year. 14-2. .926 save percentage and a 2.10 goals against average. Let me look at the Holtby stats again, and we'll take a look at them together. We got them up on the second screen again if you have us on YouTube. Oh, Pekka Rinne also having not a great season, under 90% save percentage and over 3 on the goals against. Again, Holtby's record 18-9-4, so that really indicates to me that the Caps are playing out of their mind offensively, or they're definitely scoring more than 3 goals a game on average. And we can look at team stats in a little bit. Let's look at the skaters now for the Metropolitan Division. And I'm not sure if NHL took away the ability to look at players by division, which was kind of crazy. See if there's more filters for it, because I was doing the show last week, right, and it was the first time I couldn't find by division. We usually can look at stats by division. I might have to mess around with it later on. You can look by franchises, but no divisions, which kind of makes me sad. It was a really nice way they had it organized before, so I guess maybe that wasn't a common way to search for stuff, to look at division leaders. Well, that's fine. We can pick and choose here. John Carlson, we talked about him having such a great year. Great year for him. Leading defenseman, I want to say, in points. Yep, he's definitely the first. 58 points for him, 45 on the assist count, 13 goals with, a little bit, just a hair less than half the season to go. This could be a record-breaking year for John Carlson for sure. He's definitely going to exceed personal highs. Who else is here? Ovechkin, of course. Minus 13 for Ovechkin. Wow, that I actually didn't know that. So Ovechkin at a minus 13. His power play goals must be... Yep, there you go. 11 power play goals. That explains the minus 13. I'm not sure if we're getting our Ovechkin's playing defense this year. 31-16 for him for 47 points right now. Kind of not in the top 10 in scoring, but he's been hitting some milestones. Who was it that he just passed on the all-time goal scoring list? He passed someone big, so forgive me on that. I think he's up to 11th all-time now in all-time goal scoring. Who did he pass? It was a big name. I'll have to look that up for you. Malkin's had a decent year. He's at a plus 12, 47 points. And then again, Teravainen for the Hurricanes. There's Gensel. So you know, Sidney Crosby's missed quite a bunch of time this year, just coming back later this week off of injury, which we give him a little bit of a shout out in the injury section. Rangers kind of having a strange year. I think that's a team I want to look more into. If you remember from the early episodes of the Thunderdome Puckcast, our first run-in with Georgiev, the what looks to be the goalie of the future, the heir apparent to the king, Henrik Lundqvist. I think he's been playing decent hockey. Let's see if we can find him in the statistics for the Rangers. Our law office actually had a pretty impressive year. There's Samsonov when you're looking at wins. Yeah, that's right. Grubauer moved on to the Avalanche. There he is. Looks like his goals against average has gone down. Save percentage almost near 92. My guess is the Rangers are giving up a good number of shots. Let's look at team statistics while we're at it. Of course, Capitals leading the way, 69 points. Really interesting to see the goals per game. Always a good indicator. They're at 3.5, and actually below the Lightning. Right, it's really surprising. The Panthers at 3.63 goals a game. That's amazing. Didn't know the Panthers were scoring that much. They don't get the love being a Southern team, but again, Jonathan Huberdeau and Barkov having great years. A little bit of a down year for not Brizgalov. I'm thinking of the wrong Russian goalie. For Bobrovsky down in Sunrise, Florida. But if you're outscoring, if you're scoring 3.63 goals a game, you're gonna be okay, and that their power play percentage is fine as well. Washington's got to be up there in power play percentage now. What's the first team? Rangers, actually. So right there, the Capitals, but Rangers, the top team in the Metropolitan in terms of power play, and then right behind the Capitals. Love the OT. This is really what. So some of Columbus's loser points, I guess, here are helping them make a run, but this was, I was surprised, and I actually didn't realize this until I was listening to different hockey podcasts. Bruins are leading in loser points. This is the only reason why they've got a lead right now in the East. The Lightning coming on strong, really turning it up. They should be thankful they have the OTLs. 12 of them the Bruins have, either in shootout or overtime. So it's kind of your look at the Metropolitan Division. Again, really some average play from some of our big names. Crosby's been out of action. Ovechkin really surprised by that. Minus 14. I did not expect that. So what a week it's been for the Lightning. Truly on an amazing run. A run that we needed to have. Winning streak getting to about 10 before it came to an end against those pesky New Jersey Devils. But really, it was a long time coming, and we knew that it was a long time coming. That's all I'm going to say. We've played, we talked about it in episode 7, or episode 8 of the Puckcast, how they were always on the cusp, and really not getting, at least at the beginning of the season, the performances from Vasilevsky and Curtis McElhinney. Our expected goals against was below projections, and we actually weren't scoring so much at the beginning of the year as well, but that's picked up. We're in the top 5 in scoring. I think our defense on the whole has looked a lot better, though. We'll talk about in episode 10 how we've played a little bit. Some interesting defensive play this week that we're at right now. But Carolina Hurricanes game was, again, your standard Lightning taking ownership of a game. It wasn't total domination, but I mean, Bolts were up. Geez, I want to say 2 or 3-0, and then Carolina ended up Carolina just really ended up scoring that third period goal. So again, Mitchell Stevens getting on the board, Stammer with an unassisted goal, and Braden Point, who continuously lead the Lightning in goals this year, had his 17th in that game. I think he scored his 18th and 19th later in the week. But great performance by Vasilevsky, only giving up one goal on 29 shots. Anytime you save about 92% of your shots, I think you give your team a chance to win. And really, Steve Stamkos leading the way on this one. Kind of a physical game. Lightning leading in hits. And shots are pretty even, 29-26 in favor of Carolina. Really no power play action on this one. I think it was 4 penalty minutes to 2 maybe. A little bit of a physical game, but a pretty clean and well-played game by both teams. But again, Lightning really taking the action and getting the goals. 3-1. Solid win in Carolina. Next game for the Bolts. Returning home to Vancouver. I'm going to enjoy a sip from my Manhattan here, because we got a lot to talk about the Vancouver game. Delicious. A 9-2 drubbing of the Vancouver Canucks. Bolts tie their franchise record for most goals in a game. And is it a breakout moment? Finally, we talked about Connor Verhaeghe being a little bit of a disappointment last week on the podcast. First NHL hat trick for Connor Verhaeghe against the Vancouver Canucks. I think this was only the first, I don't know if I read the second or third time in NHL history that two teams on respective 7-game winning streaks were coming to play each other, and it came to a big screeching halt for the Vancouver Canucks. 7 goals in the second period, and it's really where the Lightning pulled away. I think the Canucks opened up. Pettersson opened up the scoring. It was 1-0 heading into the second period, and all heck broke loose. Johnson with a goal. I think the Lightning scored 4 goals in, was it 2 or 3? They scored 4 goals in 2 minutes, roughly, or 3 minutes. Kaloran, Verhaeghe, Kucherov, and Chernak scoring from the 15-minute mark to the 18-minute mark. 4 goals in 3 minutes to get the Lightning to 6-2 at the end of the second. And Pointer with his 18th. Verhaeghe closing the power play, or closing the hat trick on the power play, actually, with goals 4 and 5 on the season. To get us to 9-2. Thank Louie Eriksson. Louie Eriksson, good to see he's still playing on the Canucks, getting the game even at 2-2, and then it was really pedal to the metal, Lightning taking over. Was a little bit of a chippy game. This one was one I was able to watch here in the Sports Heap Man Cave on. I pay for the NHL program, the NHL package to see the Lightning. I mean, statistics-wise, other than the shot clock, most of the stuff was even, but it was just a night and day difference. Vancouver looked tired. Demko had who started? Was it Demko who started? And then he got pulled. Let me look at the box score really quick, because I think Demko was off and he came in, I want to say, and they started, that's right, they started Markstrom. He had a bad time, and Demko did not fare much differently. Let's look at ice time on this one. It's good to see everyone in double digits, so it's always good when we're having a good time with scoring 9 goals. Your young guys get to play, so Verhaeghe was out there almost 12 minutes, along with Mitchell Stevens. So big confidence boost for the Bolts on this one. 92 win, tying, and I was at the game that they scored 9 goals back when I was in high school. I think that was a 9-0 win against the Pittsburgh Penguins, going way back to the Stanley Cup season 2003-2004. That's actually when was that Fleury's? I want to say that was Fleury's rookie year. Marc-Andre Fleury's rookie year. Still had the mustard yellow pads before he went over to the gold pads. So I want to say that was his rookie year. We got to see Fleury play. He was the backup to, I want to say it was Matthew Garan, who gave up the lion's share of those goals. Next game for the Bolts started a great performance in net by Andrei Vasilevsky. Coyotes having some tough luck. They've had a great year, don't get me wrong. Are they at the top of the Pacific? I think they're second, yeah. They're actually tied with, as of today, tied with Calgary. That's a tight division. Edmonton's down at 55 points at fifth. So that's going to be a tight division, probably getting neck and neck there with Vegas dropping from the standings. I guess that maybe why they fired Gerard Gallant. We'll get into that in a little bit. But a big 4-0 performance against the Coyotes. Again, always good to get a shutout, especially when you're at home. Vasy, a perfect 25 for 25. Cooch with 2 goals on that one. No power play goals for the Bolts. I think they went over 3 in this game. That was another one. I got to see a little tail end of the action, but mostly a dominating performance. I think some tough luck for the Coyotes. They had Darcy Kemper go down. So who's their backup? They have Darcy in there, who's had a great season, and they had a pretty good pickup over the off season. Who's you'll have to forgive me not remembering the Coyotes goalies, but they've actually had a great year this year. So not much to say about this one. A 4-0 domination by the Bolts. Vasy looking like Vasy of old. So we're excited to see that. That's really been one of our pressure points this year, is getting that consistent goaltending. And it was even more important heading up to Philadelphia. Always a tough place to play for the Bolts against the Flyers. 1-0 win. You got to win them ugly sometimes. This was a physical game. Really, Philadelphia taking it to the Bolts, out hitting us 26-10. Shots were fairly even. Bolts had the edge 28-23, but it was Patrick Maroon back from injury. He's been beat up a little bit. He's been struggling to get to this bye week that's coming up. He's dropped the gloves a time or two. Getting kind of a sweet goal to get it by Carter Hart, and it was the only goal the Bolts needed. Again, Vasy going perfect 23 for 23. We always look at the face-off statistics, and the Lightning are in the top half of the league in terms of winning face-offs. You gotta fight for possession of the puck, gotta win those face-offs, so we're happy to see that. Philadelphia always a tricky place to play for the Bolts. You always get some weird games, though, there. You always... If you guys remember the 8-7 victory a few years back, it was just a wild game. So there's plenty of 6-5s and 7-6s. So this was a little bit out of the ordinary, just a 1-0 win for the Lightning. Carter Hart was the second star of that game. He had other than that one Patrick Maroon goal, great night in net for him. 27 saves on 28 shots. That was win number 10 in a row for the Bolts. And then it came to an end against the New Jersey Devils. Unfortunately, it was the revenge game. The revenge game for Louie Domingue. He was playing on a back-to-back. He played the game before and the night before for the Devils. He really wanted this one. Especially after the Bolts sent him down to Syracuse this year. Don't know what the background information was on that. He was putting out cryptic tweets, if you remember earlier in the year, kind of, the Tampa Bay locker room's not what everyone thinks it is, and it's not at peace and whatnot. Definitely some sour grapes as he spent some time in Syracuse and ultimately picked up by the New Jersey Devils. It's played pretty well for him in support of Blackwood, who sometimes looks like he's gonna be the goalie of the future for the Devils. Corey Schneider really, other than some of the play he's had a couple of years ago, not looking like the Corey Schneider of prime. Definitely potentially his way out of the Devils. I think he's got one more year left there. I think the Devils are in blow it up mode. I mean, They fired their coach in the middle of the season, who was it Kevin Hines, who I think now is the coach of the Predators. And we'll talk about coaching changes coming up in Hot or Not. But again, just a crazy, crazy week for the Bolts. And that continued into this week. We'll cover that in episode 10 of the Thunderdome Puckcast. So coverage for this week ends with the Devils' big 9-1 run over the last 10 to this point for the Bolts. That's going to help you get up in the standings. And to be honest with you, they look scary. I mean, the team... And I think they're playing a more physical brand of hockey. I think Cooper, as much as I've criticized him, seems to understand, and maybe the team is starting to understand, that this is an 82-game grind on top of probably the 26 games you're going to play in the playoffs. So this is a 105-game grind and drive to win the Stanley Cup. And I'm hoping the team is getting that through their head, that they're not going to waltz into the playoffs. I mean, heck, even if they end up in first place, let's say they catch Boston, you can end up playing Carolina or Philadelphia. Heck, you might even play Columbus again. Not sure if that's something we want. The strongest wildcard team coming out, or the second wildcard team coming out of the Metropolitan, it's going to be a good team. And even if we end up in second and playing someone like Toronto, that's going to be a tough series. They've played so well under, who's their coach? Man, I'm having a bad time with names tonight, guys. Sheldon Keefe, I believe he used to play for the Bolts back in the 50-loss era for the Lightning. Let's move on to the injury report. This should be a quick one. Really, the only injury on record this week was Ryan McDonagh. Had been out day to day, and really that lasted into a couple weeks. 6-7 games, and he finally actually came back last night, spoiler alert, against Minnesota. Didn't look great. We'll talk about that again in the next episode. But McDonagh has been out. I was happy to see Braden Coburn. So he's not on the injury report, but he's played some solid hockey and has been drawn into the rotation along with Jan Ruda. He's been playing pretty well as well. So happy to see Braden Coburn back and solidifying the back line for us. And Palat had been battling some injury. Finally, formally came off the injury list. It's been struggling a little bit. He was honestly one of our strongest players at the beginning of the year, hoping for a big bounce back from a disappointing 2018-2019 campaign. I think he's playing pretty well, and finally off the injury report. But the big news, of course, is Sidney Crosby. Finally, I think it was a 20-odd game absence from the Penguins. The captain is back. Sid is back. And that will only help strengthen the Penguins. Hopefully they can make a run at the Capitals as we get to the last half of the season here. So that's been your injury report. Nothing too big to report for our Bolts, knock on wood. And now for one of my favorite segments, Hot or Not. We'll start with Hot. We've got some sound effects. I got some sound effects to go along with that. He's on fire. Or they're on fire, of course, the Tampa Bay Lightning, hottest team in the NHL to this point. 9-1 after that, and their last 10 with that loss against the New Jersey Devils. They've been playing lights out. The NHL needs to be concerned. The rest of the NHL needs to be concerned. They're finding their game. And if they can just carry this and know that it's a more physical game in the playoffs, they're going to make a run. This could be the time to start buying into the your bets, and maybe we'll talk about that on $10 Sports. Maybe it's time to finally put those $100 wagers on the Bolts to win the Stanley Cup. If I have some money left over from the weekends coming up with the Super Bowl, putting my futures bet on the Lightning to win the Stanley Cup. They're looking great. Someone who's not hot right now, a team that's not hot, probably the New York Islanders.
No good.
No good. They've been really struggling. 4-6 in their last 10, and against just some tough losses. Varlamov's been playing very mediocre over the last few weeks, and they were leading that division for a while. I mean, and then the Capitals jumped up pretty into November, and then they've been hanging on, but now they're stuck in that traffic jam of the Metro Division, where basically 4 teams are within 3 points of each other. So kind of what's going on in the Pacific. In the West, they could wake up on the outside looking in, especially if the Panthers and the Buffalo Sabres wake up. So on my not list as of late, the New York Islanders. Who's been hot for the Bolts? It's been Andrei Vasilevsky. Thinking he's going for his 10th win in a row. So I think he's 9-1 personally in his last 10 games. Going for his 10th win in a row, coming up against the Winnipeg Jets later tonight. So we'll see. He's been playing absolutely lights out, back-to-back shutouts. Gave up a few interesting goals against the LA Kings earlier this week, which we'll discuss. But other than that, I mean, I think his average save percentage has been in the 94%, and goals against probably in the low 2s. So Vasy, doing great to see improve over this year. You'll see down below, if you remember, right now, 2.58 goals against average. That was up in the 3s in the early episodes of the Thunderdome Puckcast. So he's been playing phenomenal for the past 2+ months to get that goals against average down and his save percentage up. So he's on my hot list. He's on fire! Not hot for the Bolts. It's got to be Yanni Gourde. Really on the schneid. I feel like he's got JT Brown syndrome where nothing's going in for him. I think in the last 5 or 6 games hasn't appeared on the score sheet much. Maybe an assist here or there. No goals for sure in this last review period. So Yanni, you're on my not list for right now. Hot list in the NHL, it's got to be Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid, who scored an absolutely magnificent goal last week. If you haven't seen it, please go look it up. These two guys leading the NHL in points. McDavid's right up there in goals as well as Draisaitl. Really keeping the Oilers in it. Again, they've been getting mediocre to slightly above average goaltending and some interesting defensive play. But it's really been these two keeping the team afloat, keeping them near the top of their division. So, hot. We'll give them a reggaeton horn, Connor McDavid, and Leon Draisaitl. Not hot in the NHL. JVR. Man, how the mighty have fallen. I know it's been kind of turning down over the last few years, right? Coming back to Philly. And just really disappointing. 1 goal in his last 9 games, and that actually might have grown to 10 or 11 at this point. And I want to say maybe 2 or 3 points in that time period. Just really struggling so much that he has been a healthy scratch for the Philadelphia Flyers. So JVR, hopefully you get stuff going again. Just not against the Lightning. Don't get going against the Lightning. JVR on the not list.
No good.
And then kind of honorable mention for the not list was being an NHL coach right now that's a tough gig. And I know it's kind of funny because we were calling for Cooper's Head a couple months ago, and some NHL teams have been taking action, which blows my mind. Blows my mind that, for me, the most puzzling firing, I think I can understand the Predators and Peter Laviolette. He's one that, he's got a lifespan of like 7 years or 6 years, and he's very successful, led them to a President's Trophy. Heck, they made the finals a year or 2 ago, right? But, man, once that voice gets old and stale, the team just stops responding, and it was time to go. So I understand that move. And I want to say they hired the Jersey coach who was fired, Heinen. The move I don't understand is Vegas firing Gerard Gallant. I mean, I guess they're not leading their division. There must have been some stuff going on in the background, and I'm still waiting for the full reports on that. it's just a puzzling move. It makes no sense. You're going to bring in DeBauer, who's like basically an NHL retread. Fired by the San Jose Sharks earlier this year. They just couldn't get him over the hump. The Sharks might actually not make the playoffs this year, which might be a blessing in disguise, so they can't disappoint the people of San Jose for the 30th year in a row. I don't understand that move by the Knights. I mean, you haven't even existed for 3 full seasons yet. You're gonna fire your coach who's gotten you to the playoffs 2 out of 2 years in your existence, and you're probably gonna make the playoffs this year. Doesn't make any sense to fire Gerard Gallant unless there was some underlying stuff in the background. Players' revolts. I just don't know. I mean, everyone in that division is either A, all the teams are very evenly matched and they keep beating up on each other, or B, they're all equally playing the same, they're just equally crappy, or equally, they're just on an even table. I just don't understand the move by Vegas. So maybe if you have an idea, tweet me at Moose_TSH. Let me know what I'm missing with the firing of Gerard Gallant. So lastly, we always do our what's coming up ahead for the Lightning. Lightning this week already played the Kings and Wild, so we'll recap those games. Tonight's game is against the Winnipeg Jets. Speaking of the Jets, got my latest jersey, the throwback Jets jersey. I got to show, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Got the white version. I want to say it's Heritage Classic with the old school logo for the Winnipeg Jets. I love it. Got my Patrick Laine jersey. They have the white version in the Heritage Classic. I think they did. And I don't know if they've worn a dark version of it this year. I love the red numbers. No, they went with the blue numbers. The dark ones have the red numbers. I love it. We'll have to get some more jersey orders in. And probably hot or not, next week we'll talk about the Stadium Series jerseys for the Kings and the Avalanche. Spoiler alert, I love the Avalanche jersey. There's a lot of hate for it. I actually really, really like it. I think it's a great design. So again, the Bolts taking on the Kings earlier this week, as well as the Wild and the Winnipeg Jets tonight. Finally, Bolts getting to their bye week. Much needed, big grind. I mean, we just recapped 5 weeks basically in 7 days. So a couple back-to-backs for the Bolts. And finally getting to that bye week, get some rest, get some relaxation as they get ready for the grind, heading to the last half of the season. Getting into those playoffs. February and March are always fun months, so lots of games put closely together, and hopefully we can get everyone fully healthy. That's been it for the Thunderdome Puckcast this week. Again, we'll have a double drop of episodes. We'll have another episode dropping probably Sunday afternoon, right around championship weekend for your enjoyment. Episode 10 should be dropping, and we'll make sure to upload those to your favorite podcasting platforms. Again, don't forget, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as iHeartRadio. If you listen to podcasts on iHeartRadio. It's been your host, the Sports Moose. Make sure to catch me on Twitter at Moose_TSH. I'm sure to have some great GIFs and memes for Championship Sunday, and I'll probably be watching the Jets game right now against the Lightning. Might be time to take off this jersey, right? We're playing against the Jets. Again, it's been your host, the Sports Moose, for the Sports Heap and the Thunderdome Puckcast. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you on the back end. Go Bolts, beat those Jets.